Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Today is Friday, and we're going to, tackle an issue on this particular day, which we always try to do on Fridays, get away from politics a little bit to try to, deal with everyday things that affect American life, whether it be, positive or negative. But, in the traditional sense of trying to solve something is mostly trying to take a negative and turn it into a positive because well, if it's broke you don't try to fix it. So if it's a positive, of course, there's not too much of anything there to solve. Now today we're going to delve a little bit into the mental health of the nation. Excuse me. Now, before I go any further, by no means are we experts on this subject. As far as college educated, degree, or anything of that sort. So this is just, a little bit of facts that we've, did our research online and, mostly opinion on what it takes to, you know, help curb, the damaging effects of mental health. Where if it's at an extreme high level, our goal here is to try to bring it down. But at Soluble, we profess no knowledge of clinical expertise as far as being able to solve the mental health crisis in America. And, that's what we stand for here, trying to be able to solve. So on this particular subject, we just want to, highlight the fact that mental health has, an extreme negative effect on the everyday lives of Americans. And, we just want to acknowledge to those Americans and their families or loved ones that, we're here and, you have our support. But by no means is this a podcast that is going to attempt to solve the mental health crisis versus, we're just here to highlight the fact that it does exist and, try to take some of the stigma off of it, to bring it, out of the background into the forefront, because, that's one of the main ways of, making it better, to talk about it, to deal with it. As you know, we had a pandemic here started here a few years back, and that really, really, tested the pulse, the mental health pulse of the nation. People being shut up, everyday activity, life as we knew it, had been cut back, curtailed, or just completely stopped altogether until we could wrap our, collective brains around the origins of COVID and, what we were going to be able to do about it to make it go away. And, in that time, mental health levels, they shot up through the roof when it comes to healthcare professionals, couples being home together and not, being able to go to work, children, not being able to go to school like they usually did. So, life as we knew it up to that point, was really turned upside down because, it was something just out of the norm, out of the ordinary that we wasn't used to dealing with. Now, mental health usually begins in human beings, and people start by like the age of 14. They start experiencing mental health issues or slight signs that there might be a problem. And mental health affects physical health. So we're here to address it or highlight it in a way that, as I said, we can talk about it, we can approach it. We can take a long look at ourselves, inside ourselves, to try and do what it takes to make the lives of others as well as ourselves better. Now, me myself, I am guilty in my burning passion to cause or to help the lives of African Americans to excel, to be better, to rise above, your current state. I have vocally expressed it with, a extreme sense of passion. So, to my family members, sometimes, they don't understand. And for that, I'm extremely apologetic. You know, while at the same time apologizing for the way I have approached it. How I've let my passion get the best of me. And I think that's where it should all start with us as Americans. We should take a long look inside ourselves, because if we're going to be totally honest, even the strongest of us, and everybody has a different breaking point, a different tolerance level, but even the strongest of us, which I consider myself to be, wrestle with mental anxiety. Sometimes I can get depressed in thinking of current situations, current state of being in my life. And it's at those times where I have myself have to dig deep, and have that long talk with myself. Take those deep breaths, try to take a step away, like an out of body experience almost, to look at what I can do to self improve, before I begin to point the finger at others, or before I begin to take out my frustrations or my anxieties on others. So, here at Soluble, we think that, as I said, going inside yourself first, starting by acknowledging that, let me examine myself mentally, and see if I am as healthy as I can be. Because, this thing could begin to spread by simply hurt people doing things to hurt other people. I've often heard it said that hurt people. So, if we take that long look inside ourselves, that first step, self-examination, and that's me. I'm my own worst critic. So I'm constantly, seeking to bring out the best that I can in myself, as a humanitarian first, you know, and that will affect how I treat others, how sympathetic I am to their plight, to their disadvantage. If they need help, honestly, how do I reach out? If they don't need help but they're looking for a handout and they're being lazy, how do I approach that situation? Do I scoff at them? Do I talk down on them and say derogative things to them? No, because I really don't know this person's beginning and ends as to how they ended up in that situation. So, one of the things, and as I said, this is opinion based. We feel here at Soluble that, when dealing with our fellow man who may be experiencing mental health crisis or mental health situation, to be a good listener would, serve a big purpose. It would go a long ways in helping any situation not escalate, or having that situation not become more traumatic than it already could be. So that's one thing, taking a look inside oneself, because just like a person can say things, do things to cause mental illness to be inflicted upon someone else through stress. If we take that long look inside ourselves and examine ourselves, then maybe before we took that action or spoke that out into the environment, we would probably do something otherwise. You know, something that I was raised up on, and I think now today, it goes a long ways in helping the mental health of myself and others around me. And it was simple. I was raised that if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything. And I think that has served a great purpose in my life, as far as being a teaching tool, something that you know you kind of shrug off as a youngster, but as you get older, you value that input, that piece of wisdom that was passed on down to you from your parents or your grandparents or whatever. And it goes a long ways in you know causing mental health issues to cease to exist. Just that one simple thing. Whereas, as I said, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. And that's as I said, that's a great deterrent in in causing mental health issues not to even exist, not to even arise to the forefront. Now, 3% to 5% of people who suffer through mental health, can be subject to become violent. And that's something that can be, like a myth, or something that's not really understand, because a lot of times we associate mental health with a person that's crazy, you know and we think of just a crazy person doing crazy things out of control, or subject to be sane one moment and then totally insane in the next few moments. And that's so not the case. That's so not the case. So um you know to destigmatize that, to erase that stigma now tonight here at Soluble, as we said in our fact finding missions, only 3 to 5% of people who suffer mental health crisis and mental health issues in this country, um, are subject to commit violence. 3 to 5%. Now that's a real low number. Now, we all have our responsibilities in society. But I'm going to take the bull by the horns here because I am a man. I consider myself to be somewhat an alpha male, because I don't mind taking the bull by the horn, jumping out into the forefront of what it takes to lead my family to greener pastures, if you will. And that takes courage, that takes know-how, that takes like a perseverance or endurance. So with that being said, as far as men, we pretty much control how things operate on this planet, for better or worse. Men make the world go around. It's a man's world, it's often said. So, we as men, we have to do a better job. And I'm not going to sit here and apologize on behalf of all men, because all men are not bad. And just like all men are not good. But looking at it honestly, looking at it with sincerity, in a way of really trying to do what we can to curtail the mental health crisis that's happening in this country. Men, we have the ability, we have the opportunity here to create, a better mental health climate in the country, in human beings. And it goes a long way. It starting in how we treat people, how we treat others, how we treat people who are different than us, that may look different, that may think different, that may do things different. We have, as men, we have a lot of power to, you know, cause the mental health crisis meter to tick up, or to cause the mental health crisis meter to tick down. Men, we have a lot of power there. And with the state of being in the country now, this burden falls on us. The shame, the guilt, um, the blame. It all falls on us, because it begins with us, and in a lot of cases it ends with us. Now, more than 43 million Americans struggle with mental illness. More than 43 million. That's a rather significant number in a country with 300 something odd million people in existence in the total population. That is a pretty significant number. What can we do better? That's the question that we're posing here tonight at Soluble. What can we do better? And if we can take a long look inside of ourselves, we can probably come away as better human beings, better individuals. Here at Soluble, aside from our political beliefs, our political leanings, and our political um, podcast that we do on a weekly basis to inform, we're first and foremost, we're humanitarians. We're here to try to bring out the best in humanity, which should be the duty of all men. But as I've said before, all men are not good and all men are not bad. That's not to judge, but that's just to tell it like it is. I myself, I'm my worst critic, but I strive every day to become a better person than I was the day before. And even as I strive to become that better person, I'm still, a somewhat flawed individual. So, It's not where, one should beat oneself up. It's a work in progress. It's taking it one day at a time, if you will, to try to become that better version of yourself. Because when we can really bring out the best in ourselves, then we should be able to bring out the best in others. And I can't help but to go back and stay on it. Men, we have a lot of work to do because believe it or not, or like it or not, whatever the mental health climate is in the nation, excuse me, it's determined by us as men. It's shaped and molded by us. We have the power to lower the temperature, or cause the temperature to steady rise when it comes to mental health crisis, mental health issues in this country. And as I said, when the pandemic came, it really, really, pushed us to the breaking point as far as, not being able to do the normal things, being shut up, with an abusive spouse, or in a abusive relationship, whether it be verbal, whether it be physical, whether it be both. It did nothing to, you know, cause the mental health temperature in this country to be lowered. It got worse. And so, as I said, I would like for all of our male listeners out there, especially, to take a long look at yourselves. And, that doesn't say that women, grown women, don't bear responsibility also. I mean, we all can play a collective part. But, that's just our position here at Soluble, that men should take, the lion's share of the blame for where we are at in this country as far as mental health. And we've seen cases over the years, especially here in recent years, in the age of, the protest of 2020, and just, the social climate in the country was just so terrible here, in the last 5 years. What can we do better? That's the $600,000 question. What can we do better? As I said, first, let's start with ourselves as individuals, and taking that little piece of advice that, like I said, I received so long ago as a child, and it means so much now because, as I said, it causes confusion to cease. It causes disorder, chaos, aggravating circumstances. It causes it all to cease, to cease and desist. So, let that, stay in the back of your mind when it comes to, when we're trying to make the world a better place, or leave it a better place than we found it. If you don't have nothing good to say, don't say anything at all. Mental health, um, you know, we need to do a better job in this country of, dealing with these episodes. Oftentimes families, they're dealing with a loved one, a family member that, is going through a mental episode. Maybe they're off their meds, or maybe they're just having a bad reaction from their meds, or having a bad day period. And, oftentimes when, there's no one else to call in that situation, we're calling law enforcement. And, we've seen here recently, how law enforcement is so not equipped to handle these situations, you know, um, because it is a terrible thing. It is so inhumane for a police officer to show up on scene where there's a mental health crisis occurring, and as a first resort, which, here in society we say it was a last resort, but as a first resort, there are gunshots being fired. And here's a person who is not in their right mind. They're not really in control of their actions. And they're staring down the barrel of a gun with their life on the line. And, it is, what's so shocking and saddening about it is that they're not in their right mind. And, so for an officer to draw his weapon in that situation and use deadly force, is totally uncalled for. And we feel we here at Sawyer feel like as Americans we can do a much better job, of caring for our mentally ill or any citizen who may be having a mental episode at any given time, any given time. Can maybe possibly police forces across America, police departments across America can have an on call, if not on site, employed mental health caretaker, a mental health specialist that's on call. Okay, we have a call. There's a mental episode. There's a family member here, and they're having a real bad episode. They're having a bad day. They're having a bad reaction to their meds. Then it's like boom, this person, he or she is right there. They're either on call where they show up on scene at the same time as law enforcement, or they're right at the precinct or at the police department being employed as a mental health team that is a part of law enforcement, a mental health division, if you will. We have drug task force, we have gang units, we have SWAT teams that specialize. We can very well establish some kind of department or some kind of team at police departments all across America that only deal with calls that are related to people having a mental health crisis or going through a mental episode. We can do better. And that's just one idea that we're putting on the table to law enforcement, to our public officials, who write laws, who make laws, who comes up with the chain of command, if you will, of how any of these situations are going to be dealt with. But we know and we feel that law enforcement, armed only with a weapon that can possibly destabilize a dangerous situation or neutralize a dangerous situation. But it's uncalled for in the situation or in the case where there's a person having a mental health crisis, because we here at Soluble feel that in that situation, the only danger that the person having the mental health crisis is a danger to is themselves. The only danger they are is to themselves. Because, for example, they're going through a mental episode and they have a knife. If, a person knew that, I have a knife, my family's going to call law enforcement, and it's quite possible I can get, shot and killed because this is considered a deadly weapon. No one in their right mind is going to face down law enforcement or anybody for that matter with a knife, and the other person, mostly in this case, the other person is being law enforcement, has a gun. What sane person, and this is dealing with mental health here now, what sane person brings a knife to a gunfight? So, it's kind of, it's kind of common sense. It kind of goes without saying that when it comes to mental health, the last thing that we should be doing to deal with it, any situation where there's a family member or there's something going on in public where public service officials have to get involved because there's a mental health issue going on. The last thing we need, not the first, and that's where we're at now at this day and time, and we need to try to change it. The last thing we need to do is to call law enforcement, because for one, they're not qualified. They're not qualified. Of course, they know how to de-escalate or neutralize a threat. Of course, because they have a service weapon. They have their taser. They have pepper spray. They have batons. And, to say that I was in fear of my life, or here's a person with going through a mental health episode, they're not really in control of what they're doing mentally. That's the whole idea of having a mental health episode. So it's like taking a person that's, for lack of a better word, going crazy in their mind, and they're not really in control of their actions. And then we solve that, or we think the solution to dealing with that person is to take their life versus try to get them some help. So at Soluble here, we're going to advocate for mental health specialists in police departments all across America, or mental health specialists that are on call, that are on paid call to deal with these situations, because they are the ones best qualified to de-escalate, and it's going to say a lot about us as a civilized society if we continue to respond to mental health crisis when we're called upon as society, that the first public service officials that are called out to address these situations is law enforcement. Mental health people who are going through mental health crisis are not breaking the law. They're not breaking the law. So why would law enforcement be the first ones that are called? Of course, in situations where the law is being broken, of course, give me the police first and foremost. Give me that public service official who's going to serve and protect me in this situation. But in the case of people who are suffering through a mental health episode or mental health crisis, as I said, they're not breaking the law. And we as a society, as a civilized society, as a Judeo-Christian nation, our first obligation will be to get them help. Get them help. And that help needs to come from a qualified individual. And law enforcement is just so not that qualified individual, because we should be trying to save a life here. We should be trying to help someone, to come out of this episode, versus looking at them as a target for assassination if they don't get it together, if they don't straighten up. Because I said no sane person that I know of, and I'm quite sure that you know of, would take a knife to a gunfight. And I say that in relation to some of these situations where law enforcement has been called out, and the person has a knife, which is a deadly weapon, which in America is considered a deadly weapon. But for a person that's having a mental health episode, the only danger that they pose is a danger to themselves. And it's time that we as a society, understand that, realize that. I mean, we're fresh into a new year now. And so, can we make a difference? Here at Sawyer, we're going to try to bring all issues, to the forefront and discuss them in an honest, sincere way that tries to try to get answers, try to do whatever it takes to make the lives of these individuals who are already in a state of self-torment, to try to do whatever we can to make it better for them. And we know that, law enforcement showing up with a gun is not the way. Now, we enjoy a lot of freedoms in this country that, contribute to, or could possibly contribute to, the uptick of mental health issues in this country. We have the freedom of speech. We have the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms. And oftentimes, in a nation where we're gun lovers, we have the freedom and the right to bear that gun. When we enjoy freedom of speech through even hate speech is protected by the First Amendment. Even hate speech. And so, we have to take a long look at with the fact that more than 43 million Americans struggle with mental illness in this country. Can our freedoms, that we enjoy, could they in fact somewhat be hurting us? And that's the honest question that we have to ask ourselves. We enjoy a lot of freedoms in this country. But can we have put ourselves in a position where we enjoy freedoms that actually hurt us? When you think of freedom, you think of an independence there, independence to have fun, independence to express yourself, to be you, without no unjust constraints. But we have to take a look in the mirror. Start with the man in the mirror, and we have to ask ourselves, can the freedoms that we so wholeheartedly enjoy in this country, can they actually be hurting us? Can they actually be causing us to eat ourselves from within, so to speak, to destroy ourselves from within, so to speak? Um, because we've done a little research here, and we looked into some of the root causes of mental illness in this country, and they could include childhood abuse, trauma, neglect. Any of those three that a child has to endure or deal with could cause mental stress. Mental stress. And we know it's not good. We know it's not good. So I guess, starting with that person in the mirror, as I said, it's important to say, what can I do better? What can I do better? I mean, we did a segment here a couple weeks back, as far as, crimes committed against children in America. And, whether you looked at it then while it was being recorded live, or whether you went back, into some of our archival footage and looked at it, you know that we're very passionate about protecting children. Here at Soluble, we're very passionate about it. But, that's one of the causes of mental illness in this country. Others: social isolation, discrimination, poverty, debt, grief, excessive drug use, severe or long-term stress. Now, when I look at this list of things that can cause, mental illness or severe mental illness, it really boils down to human behavior. That's what it really boils down to. Human behavior. A lot of this, you know, uh, of course, childhood abuse, trauma, neglect. And we know that children are the nearest thing to heaven. They're innocent. They're pure as the driven snow. The things the hatreds that they learn, the hurtful words that they learn, it is learned from an adult whose care that they are in. But I was once a child. I didn't ask to come here. And when I was born into this world, in the whole scheme of things, I was innocent. I was lucky enough to be, brought up with adults around me that loved me, that cared for me, and that kept me out of harm's way. Taught me the important things the way humans should carry themselves in life. You know, don't cheat, don't steal, kill. Do unto others, and the basic things that good parents or your elders try to teach you. So that you can live an honest, productive life. And you know, oftentimes kids, they're not born into this. They could be born into harsh environments of extreme poverty, environments of drug use, drug abuse, which could lead to violence, could lead to emotional stress, emotional trauma. But at the end of the day, as I said, the vast majority of things that trigger and or cause mental illness in this country are because of humans. It's things that we as human beings are doing. Nothing more, nothing less. Excuse me, bear with me here for a minute. I was trying to do some tinkering around here in my comment section. We thank you, Ms. Polly, for joining us tonight. You're one of our true regulars, and we enjoy your feedback. We enjoy your comments. We welcome any input that you may have. Um, but beginning where I left off, human behaviors, human actions are really, the root cause of it. We can as human beings in this country, on this planet, we have the power to make mental illness become less and less severe, or if we don't act the way we should as human beings, then we have the power to cause it to increase. 43 million, Americans struggle with mental illness. Can we do better? I mean, I think that's a question that we all should dig down deep and ask ourselves. Can we do better? As I said, we're by no means, clinical professionals, licensed doctors. So, while our goal our goal here at Soluble is to always try to bring relevant information to the table, relevant facts to help solve, to make it better, to help solve, to make it go away. By no means do we profess to have the knowledge um, that it takes to, solve the mental health crisis that we face in this country. We just wanted to highlight it on this Friday issue day, um, to let these people know that you're not suffering in silence. We understand. We have to erase the stigma. And look. Take the time to listen. Take the time to maybe try to understand what a person may be going through. You know, you would be surprised that you could make mental illness or mental stress in a person ease or go away simply by giving a good morning greeting, simply by any act of kindness, any kind words, a simple "how are you doing, is everything okay?" We are, as humans, and I hang this more on men, because oftentimes we are controlling the narrative. We as humans, we have the power to make the mental health crisis in America better, to make mental illness in this country something that's very treatable, by relating to it better, by having qualified individuals on hand. Anytime that there's a situation where, there's a mental health crisis taking place in any neighborhood, in any state, in any community, having experts on hand who are qualified. Because oftentimes now, as I said, we're sending out law enforcement, and we're actually threatening the lives of people who are not totally in control of their actions and or what they're doing. And grief, you know, grief is something that we see in this country all too often. Are we being swallowed up by our freedoms? Are we abusing our freedoms to the point that it's killing us from within? It's causing the mental health crisis to, skyrocket, to go out of control. Because, those of us who are grounded, who are more in a solid on a more solid mental footing, then we have the obligation. It's our duty as human beings to uplift our fellow man, not tear them down. Harsh words. It could be in a relationship. It could be in a situation where your boss is riding you, that's causing mental stress. A desire to max out the profits, to max out production. So, that's just, one of the things out of many. Are we in our zealousness and our overzealousness to get riches, to have a status, to maintain that status? Will we, are we willing to walk on other individuals to get to the top? How severely are we willing to trample upon others, their feelings, to get to the top? Trample, walk all over their emotions. We're only human. We're flesh. We all have feelings. And, you know, we all have mental health situations where we wrestle within. Some of us deal with it better than others, but we all go through things mentally where, sometimes it can be a bit much. And so, those of us who have a higher breaking point, if you will, have a higher tolerance level, can stand more than others. Then, we owe it to those who don't have that high level to truly be sympathetic to their plight, to their cause, to any, difficult, negative situation that a person is going through. And you will be surprised how much, a few words of kindness can go a long ways in helping, to cure the mental health crisis that we're dealing with in this country. You would be surprised at how far saying nothing when you don't have anything good to say. You would be surprised at how far it goes in helping to make better the mental health crisis that we're dealing with in this country. Simple things, simple things. But the last thing we should do is, approach these situations, looking at this person as the enemy, the problem, the bad guy when they're going through these mental health episodes. I mean, because let's face it, we as human beings, we can be cruel, we can be unsympathetic, we can be cold, we can be uncaring in our anger, in our jealousy, with our competitive nature. So, going forward, let's be considerate. You know, let's take a long look at an individual, a family member, when, it seems as if they're having a bad day, because they probably are. And one of the best things we can do, as I said, is to be a good listener. Instead of doing all the talking, a long ways to go in helping to curb it or to stop it would be to be a good listener. And then, to hear, what the person is actually going through, what they're actually feeling. Then, offering words of support, you know, giving them possible leads, as far as to where they can go get help, you know, go and be clinically evaluated or what have you. But, to put a stigma on people who suffer through mental illness is just, totally wrong. To put a negative stigma, to make them feel ashamed, so ashamed to the point where they carry the burden around, and feel as if they have nowhere to turn. We as Americans, we can do better. We must, you know, because at the end of the day, we all share this planet together. We all share this planet together. And, as a Judeo Christian nation, as a nation that was founded on Judeo Christian principles and ideas, our first obligation, one to another, should be to uplift, to support, to encourage. And so, we thought that, here at Soluble, coming into the new year, here we are somewhere into a fresh start. Um, and you kind of sit back and brace and wonder, how the year is going to start out. All old things are forgotten. There's a fresh start here, a brand new year. Let's see if we can take mental health in this country and, put it up on a pedestal, if you will, to try and make it better for the people who are suffering through it, to try to be more understanding, be more supportive, sympathetic. And it would go a long ways in curbing the mental health crisis that we face in this country. Is ask yourselves, are medicinal remedies, are they better than human interactions, humans being sympathetic to one another? What's better? Ask yourself. Medicinal remedies through through a doctor's order, through a doctor's written out prescription. I've encountered a few people who deal with mental health, and they don't like the feeling that they get when they take the medicine. Oftentimes, when they take the medication, they don't like the way it makes them feel. Now, you think about that for a minute versus a person who is dealing with mental health issues and they're around people who give them support, who are sympathetic and who listen and offer words of encouragement. No one's ever rejected anything like that. And it's not to say that they're rejecting the medicine, but it makes them, it's like it makes them feel worse than they were feeling before they took it. The mood that it puts them in, the thoughts that go through their head. I mean, I can't talk from experience, so I can't say I know how they feel, but I can be sympathetic and try to be understanding. But believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Americans, our position here at Soluble is that we think, as I said, human interaction, human understanding, humans being sympathetic to other humans, being sensitive to what they're going through or what the things that they might be dealing with, goes a lot further in curing mental illness, in helping the people who are going through this get better. Human interaction goes a lot further than pills or medicine. Of course, in some extreme cases, of course, it takes medicine to calm them down, possibly to, bring them back into a state of calm or rational, if you will. And in those cases or in those situations where that's called for, let it be, let it be prescribed, let it be taken. But at the same time, when we as human beings, because this really is all about feelings, this is about emotions when you're dealing with mental health, what a person is thinking, how they're feeling. This is simply basically, in a lot of cases, human emotion, where a kind word can go a long ways, or a few kind words can go a lot farther than harsh words that hurt. So we have the power to control it. We have the power to deal with it better. And those of us who are in a more solid state of mind, it's our duty as human beings to protect these individuals, to stand up for them, to speak out on their behalf, because they're not of sound mind to speak for themselves. So as I said, police departments, any local city government, city council, mayors, we're encouraging you to let brighter minds come together. Let common sense thinking come together in a brainstorming way, if you will. First of all, realizing that, a person who is suffering through a mental health episode, the last thing, not the first, because they're not criminals and they haven't committed a criminal act. They only pose a danger to themselves. So, our request here at Soluble tonight, our number one request is that police departments across America, law enforcement agencies, any agency that has to do with the well-being of human beings, let's make it a rule, a law, if you will, across the board, that in these situations, the last thing or the last public service officials that we should be getting involved is law enforcement, because their job is to fight crime, not mental illness. And so for the fact that we're calling out law enforcement in these situations shows that we have a long ways to go. You know, um, but it's not a long ways as far as a physical journey in the way that we're thinking, in the way that we approach the situation to try and calm things down. And I think that it's been well understood in this country that law enforcement is not the best at de-escalation. I mean, of course, a lot of law enforcement agencies across the country are requiring officers to take de-escalation classes, or engage in de-escalation courses, because a lot of situations call for it, where there doesn't have to be shots fired, or there doesn't have to be lives lost. So in our final appeal tonight, when it comes to mental health and the mental health crisis that this country is facing, or that we're dealing with the 43 something, million that struggle with this and counting, and it's across all demographics. Young people deal with it the most. Women deal with it more than men. And I've spoken it earlier. Men, it's on us, because you know the way the world revolves often is around what men do and or don't do. And the facts are there. Women suffer a greater percentage of mental health crisis than men do. And this is not to say that women are blameless or faultless, but we are the first line of defense. God created us so. God created us so. And so being one myself, I pledge to try to be the one who makes it better and not worse. And so, that's where we're at. We need a few good men to sit down across the table with what we might perceive to be a few bad men. And by bad, that doesn't mean that they have bad actions or they have bad intentions. But maybe, they're just bad in the sense of dealing with the mental health crisis that's going on in this country. When I was a young fool and I was doing hurtful things, teasing my friends, playing tricks on other people that I thought were funny. I didn't know, you know, that these are the type of things that can contribute to an emotional breakdown or mental health letdown, if you will. I mean, of course, it doesn't do the mental psyche good, for someone to be taunted, picked on, belittled, made to feel in shame or embarrassed. That's not good for mental health. So, start by looking at the person in the mirror, which is me. So I'm going to look for, I pledge tonight here at Soluble to seek out a better version of myself from this day forward, from this night forward, to seek out a better version of myself in dealing with human beings, people, period. We know that charity begins at home with one's own race. But as a humanitarian from there, all people and what they may be going through mentally it should be important. We should, have time in our day, if you will, where we have this situation in front of us. And if we don't have time, we should be able to make a little time, because a few words of encouragement don't require a lot of time. A few words of encouragement don't require a lot of time. A few words of sympathetic understanding, words of support, encouragement, words of love, words of dedication, words of loyalty, words of support can go a long ways, a long, long ways. a lot further than medicine, clinical specialists in combating the mental health crisis that we face in this country. Children are innocent. All good men should go to war for them. All good men should go to war for them. And that's where we're at, man. That's where we're at to men in this world. You know, the ones of us who understand that, we're all human beings and we should be here to first and foremost, uplift each other. And I stress first and foremost because, we know from the prophets of old that there's a time for everything under the sun. There's a time for war. There's a time for peace. There's a time to laugh. There's a time to cry. There's a time to celebrate. There's a time to mourn. So there's a time for all things. So surely there must be a time where we as human beings, especially men, in the humanitarian role, is a time to take out for others who may be going through emotional trauma, who may be dealing with abuse, and play our part in whatever way that we can. Something that may be small to you may be big to someone else. Some words of encouragement that you give to a person who's going through something mentally. It may be the words that they need to hear that catapults them into a beginning of a healing state. So we can all play our part, no matter how small. And as I said, it can start with simple words of support, encouragement, love. Words. So, in closing, when it comes to dealing with mental health in this country, that's what we're asking. We're not here capable of solving the crisis, but we can bring it to the forefront. We can bring it to light so that we can talk about it. And in talking about it, we can better understand it. And in better understanding it, we can better deal with it. And in better dealing with it, we can make it better for a lot of people who are dealing with emotional trauma, with social stress. We can all play a part. So with that being said, we're going to close this segment tonight. Dealing with mental health in this country. That was the issue for today. As I said, we're fresh into a new year, and we can begin to make a difference from this day forward. Trying to be a better version of ourselves. If you're the bullying type, if you're the type that wears your emotions on your sleeves and you don't mind blurting out words that hurt, you can be a better version of yourself and go a long ways in, curbing the mental health crisis that we face in this country. We as human beings, we're the cause of it. So if we cause it, we have to be able to try to look inside ourselves and try to find somewhere in there a cure for something that we've caused, which is, the mental health crisis that we're dealing with in this country. And it's primarily started and caused by the way we treat each other, the way we treat children, the way we treat our spouse. If you're a boss man, the way you treat your employees. If you're a supervisor, the way you treat the people who work up under you. But we can all play a part by simple with words of love, words of encouragement, and words of upliftment. And surely that is not too much to ask from a nation that was founded on Judeo-Christian values. Surely that can't be too much to ask. We have, more than 43 million struggle with mental illness in this country. And, as a country founded on those Judeo-Christian values, we can do better. We can do better. Let's start with words of encouragement, words of upliftment, positive words, period. Positive thinking, period. for the sake of helping the mental ill become better. A simple good morning, how you doing? Or you look so lovely today. A compliment, will go a long ways in stemming the mental health crisis, as absurd as it may sound. But as I said, words of encouragement, words, period. We started it, and we didn't start it with medication. We didn't start it with, writing prescriptions. And we're not going to cure it with medication and writing prescriptions. We're going to, stem the tide of mental illness and stress in this country by the way we treat each other. Simple. Simple. It was started by human interaction, and that's what's going to cure it. That's what's going to be the cure all. That's what's going to be the number one thing that causes mental health crisis in this country to cease to exist, or for the numbers to gradually go down from more than 43 million to 30 million, 20 million, and just gradually keep going down based on the way that we treat each other. We're not going to politicize it. We don't know if there's anything that we can, have lawmakers to put on the books, in dealing with the mental health crisis. But if it's something there, believe we here at Soluble, we're going to advocate on behalf of it. So in closing, as I said, words are powerful. Those of us that know the book and know, the ways of God in the beginning, we know that in the beginning was the word. In the beginning was the word. Was it a word of hate? Was it a word of hurt? Was it a word of destruction? No. So in the beginning was the word. And here we are today in the year of our Lord 2023, fresh into a new year. Let's put out words of encouragement, words of upliftment, because in the beginning was the word, and right here now today, when it comes to dealing with the mental health crisis that we face in this country, it starts and ends with the word. And words of love, words of encouragement are very powerful, and they go, a lot further in curbing the mental health crisis that we face in this country than medicine would or ever can. Than medicine would or ever can is the word. And that is that word of communication on how we communicate with the mentally stressed. The way we communicate with them, human being to human being. That we feel like here at Soluble will go a long ways in stemming the tide of the mental health crisis that we face in this country today. So in closing, we like to thank you for joining us. We love, coming to you with issue after issue, in order to make things better, not worse. Make things better through discussion, through intelligent minds coming together. To Miss Polly Williams, if you're out there listening, we would like for you to bring an issue to the forefront for next week. I will be in contact with you. If you have something, if you have several things, we would love to debate it, negotiate it here at Soluble. And being honest, being sincere, and getting down to the nitty gritty of what it takes to solve whatever current, uncomfortable situation that you may find yourself in. Any climate, any situation, family, home, job, everyday life, relationship. We want to discuss it because at the end of the day, we're humanitarians. We're humanitarians, and love for one's fellow man is the law of God, and that's where we strive to be in today's Judeo-Christian society. So when you see someone having a bad day, when you see someone who might be going through, a mental health episode, try words of encouragement first, words of love versus love of hate and or disdain. And you will begin to see, as we do this on an individual basis, wherever we may find ourselves at in dealing with said person, that it will make life for that person, life here in America, for all of us. We're a blessed nation, and we become more blessed by uplifting our fellow man versus tearing them down. So we hope that you will take this to heart, and the next time you're in that situation where you're around that person, or you find yourself dealing with that person who is dealing with a mental health episode, dig deep, think long and hard about what you would want someone to do for you in that situation, and do the same thing for the individual that you may be around who is dealing with a mental health episode. And that's the closing thought on this issue of mental health in America. We thank you for joining us. We're here. We're here to listen. We're here to offer advice, and support in whatever way we can. Because at the end of the day, as I said, we're humanitarians, and the upliftment of society is what we're about versus the tearing down of society. So we thank you for joining us tonight on this podcast dealing with the mental health issues in this country. We don't know where we'll be next week, God willing, but we plan to have another issue, that we bring to the forefront in order to, make the lives of everyday Americans better. Because if it's that soluble, we're always trying to solve, and we're all about upliftment and bringing out the best in humanity in the best way possible that we know how. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next week when we will dive back into the political discussion. Power to the people. And until we meet again, we wish you love, success, and Godspeed. This is Soluble signing off. Thank you for joining us tonight. We say good night and God bless. Thank you.